Welcome and good evening. My name is Sophie Torres, and I am the Regional Advocacy Director for Raise Your Hand Texas here in the Coastal Bend. Thank you for joining us today for the Texas House District 34 Candidate Forum. The future of Texas, our economies, communities, and citizenry depends on how well our public schools and students prepare today. All students deserve a level playing field and equal access to quality public education. We believe our public school students represent the greatest hope for educating and preparing the 5.4 million Texas students for the future. Fun fact, did you know those 5.4 million students in Texas represent 10% of the public school students in the United States? 10% of public school students are being educated in our Texas schools today. Raise Your Hand Texas is a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization that was founded 18 years ago to advocate on behalf of public education. We are coordinating series of candidate forums like today across Texas in the weeks leading up to the primary on March 5th. Happening right now, there's 5 of these forums across the state. As an organization, we do not endorse candidates, and we provide opportunity like tonight's event to help voters learn more about the candidates on their ballot before they cast their vote. We are grateful to the League of Women Voters in Corpus Christi for helping put on this forum, and for KIII, who is live streaming the event on their 3 News Plus platform. We thank you all for taking the time this evening for joining us to learn more about the candidates today and what they have to say about public education. As audience members, we ask you to please maintain an atmosphere of respect. Please refrain from applauding or any other expression of approval or disapproval during the question and answer period. We will show our appreciation to the candidates at the conclusion of the forum. I would now like to introduce our moderator for the evening, Mike Alaspia. Mike is a news anchor for KIII locally. Thank you, Mike, for serving as our moderator today.
Thank you. Let me just say from the outset that you've probably been able to tell by now, we don't have this for amplification. So if you're in the back and you think, I'd probably hear better if I was up front, we do have a lot of open chairs here up in front. And you won't bother anybody up here, I promise, if you want to move up at any time. We certainly understand and appreciate that. I am pleased to be here alongside the candidates for House District 34. That is what y'all were running for, right? All right, I just wanted to make sure I had not popped into the wrong candidate forum. So therefore, we're going to get rid of the talent and swimsuit portion of our time together tonight. And we will move on with the business at hand. I will need to read some things to you because we, in order to make this smooth and equitable and to get the most out of our time tonight, are going to need to lay out some guidelines, both for the candidates and for those of you who are here watching tonight. We also want to, by the way, welcome those who are joining us by stream, and we appreciate many folks who will be checking this out via the web tonight. I want you to know that all of the candidates have received a copy of the forum questions ahead of time. Candidates, here are the rules that we have for you tonight for this forum. We're going to ask each of you to respond directly to the content matter that is in the question that is posed. We ask you not to engage with your fellow candidates and refrain from referencing other candidates' past statements. We want you to use your time to allow those who are present, and again, those who are viewing online, the opportunity to learn more about you and where you stand on a lot of these very vital issues. Audience members, we do have some things that we require from you as well. We ask that you maintain an atmosphere of respect, as has already been mentioned tonight. Please refrain from applauding or any other expression of approval or disapproval. That means no cheers, no boos, thumbs up, thumb down, maybe if nobody around you sees it. But other than that, we would like for you to just kind of stay away from that, and we're going to show our appreciation to all of these candidates for being here and giving us this opportunity at the conclusion of our program tonight. Here's how it's going to work. Each candidate is going to have 2 minutes for an opening statement. They'll have the same amount of time to answer the question that is posed, and the same amount of time to provide a closing statement at the end. Now, we do have a timekeeper up here in the front row who's going to do her best to kind of keep them on track tonight, although I don't think that will be a problem. You all know how this works. The 2 minutes, you have actually a lot of time to say what you want to say if you know how to be concise and how to be brief. Politicians usually can do that. Or that's a dream I have. But we're going to count on that tonight. Just 2 minutes in order to get through each of these questions and give everyone a chance to answer equally. 2 minutes is about the time that we're going to have. The opening and closing statements will be done in alphabetical order. The speaking order for the questions will vary, meaning I'll ask a question and we'll have different ones of our candidates be the first one to answer, second, third, and so forth and so on. So that's kind of how all of that works. So we have all of that out of the way. We want to begin tonight with our opening statements, and as I mentioned, alphabetical order brings us to Mr. Barrera. You have 2 minutes for your opening statement.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you everyone for coming, and thank you to Raise Your Hand South Texas and KIII for providing this forum. You know, as indicated, my name is Roland Barrera, and I'm running for state representative, District 34, and I want to tell you why. You know, some of you know my story. I was born and raised here in the Coastal Bend. I raised my 3 children here, and now I help with my 2 beautiful grandchildren. I'm a Moody High School graduate, and I've operated a local small business since 1996. You know, and the community has given me tons of support. I mean, inspiration from every opportunity I've had, whether it been my public school years, the neighborhood schools, and to the excellent workforce training and educational opportunities at Del Mar College. To the friends and mentors who've helped me along the way, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you. I've been a part of this community all but 4 years of my life. I spent 2 years in Houston, 2 years in Dallas, and I was lucky enough to get fired. I had to come back home. You know, and I've been dedicated to the community ever since then. Over the last 25 years, it's been my honor and my privilege to serve as on committees and boards. And as a city councilman of District 3, it's ridiculously gratifying to be able to work with neighbors and residents and businesses of the Coastal Bend. And as your state representative for District 34, I want to help to build on the great work that we as a community have done together, and to help support everyone's efforts to bring in a new era of progress and prosperity. As your state representative, I'll work to continue to help create better futures for all Texans. 30 seconds, wow. So the things that are important to me are basically, you know, access to healthcare. You know, healthcare is a privilege, not a right. I'm sorry, it is a privilege, but not only a privilege, but a right for every family. And we've got a shortage of doctors here, and we need to make sure that everyone has access to healthcare. Fighting for our public schools, this is a great forum so we can discuss what we need to do to educate our children. Economic opportunities. Since I've been on the council, thank you very much.
All right. And thank you for noticing the 2 minutes.
All right.
Mr. Ortiz, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you everyone for attending. Thank you to Raise Your Hand Texas. I'm Roland Ortiz Jr. and I want to be your next state representative for District 34. Many of y'all may remember when I previously served as your state representative, that was for District 33. And back then, one of my proudest accomplishments when I served in the legislature was helping create the Texas A&M Corpus Engineering School. I authored the bill on the House side, Senator Reynolds authored it on the Senate side. It took us 2 sessions, but we got it done. And one of the things that we did was we brought the whole higher ed committee to Corpus to tour A&M, tour the campus. So you can imagine the legislators were blown away. The campus is beautiful, and it really helped in our efforts to create the engineering school. Since then, because of the engineering school, now A&M Corpus has the drone program, which many of you all probably know about. So the engineering school has really helped expand what A&M Corpus is doing. So that's one of the proudest accomplishments that I had back when I served. I'm proud of the endorsements and the support that we've gained during this campaign, whether it be the unions, whether it be the local AFT, the state AFT, local elected officials, other elected officials, local leadership. I'm proud of the support that we've received. And with your help and your support, I'll be your next state representative for District 34. bringing that experience, and not only that, the seniority that carries over. And I'd be going in as a fourth term member. And that's a big deal because that makes a difference in committee assignments. Committee assignments would be those, the committee assignments I would want to be on would be the ones that directly impact here in the coastal bed. So thank you so much and look forward to answering your questions tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Ortiz. Ms. Villalobos.
I'm Denise Villalobos, and I am the Republican nominee for House District 34. I was born and raised right here in the district. I attended Tolosa Midway from pre-K 4 all the way through graduation. I grew up in a family that was extremely economically disadvantaged. We hovered right around that poverty line. I had an extremely hard-working mother, but yet my father struggled with substance abuse with meth and opioids for his entire life. As you can imagine, that posed not the best input to a child going into public ed. I was constantly 1 to 2 reading levels below all of my classmates. Yet, by the determination of my teachers and by the grace of God, I somehow graduated top 10 in my class. I went on to Texas A&M University, Kingsville, where I got my chemical engineering degree in 3 years because of the dual credit classes offered at my high school. From there, I went to live in Salt Lake City, Utah, San Francisco, California, Houston, Texas, doing engineering across Chevron corporations. Me and my husband decided to come back home because we wanted to raise a family here in this amazing district. Currently, we have a foster son that we're hoping to adopt by the end of the year. I 100% support public education, and I hope you see through my answers today that it's not where you start, it's what you do with life, and I hope to make a difference, and I will represent you well in this. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you very much for each of you for your opening statements. Now, the way I'm going to ask these questions is I will give a little background about what spurred this particular question, and that is really for my benefit and for yours, so that we have a context to know why we'll hear some of the answers that we hear tonight. And that is the case here with these first 2 questions. So if you'll bear with me as I read through some of this, I think it will be helpful, and then we'll get the answers from our candidates. The 88th regular legislative session and the additional 4 special sessions elevated numerous education policy issues at our Texas Capitol. We're talking about things like teacher pay, inflationary pressures, the $1.9 billion special education funding shortfall, rethinking our assessment and accountability systems, and of course, the school choice or voucher debate. Unfortunately, all of these major policy issues ended up stalling and are on hold until either a 5th special session is called sometime this year, or the next regular session, which happens in January of 2025. Texas entered the 2023 legislative sessions with historic budget surpluses. Over $33 billion was available coming into the regular session. And after funding $18+ billion for property tax relief, the state still has $18 billion remaining. That's after updated budget estimates. In addition, the legislature set aside $4 billion in the state budget for school funding and $500 million for vouchers that will remain untouched until legislation is passed by both chambers. So, having said that, here are the first questions we'll ask of you. What do you think were the biggest public education accomplishments of the 88th regular session and special sessions, and what issues do you believe still need major attention? And we're going to begin with Ms. Villalobos.
Unfortunately, there wasn't much to cheer about when it came to public education in this legislative session. Unfunded mandates, school choice gridlock, and little to no increase in public school funding. I will talk about 3 areas, though, that I did think were to cheer about. Proposition 9, TRS, COLA adjustments for our retired teachers. We need to protect and take care of our teachers, not just when they're in the classroom, but when they leave the classroom as well. That passed by 83% of the vote when it came to the ballot for Texans in November, and that was the first adjustment those teachers had seen in over a decade. There were some that were receiving their retirement in 2004 and had never seen an increase. That's insane. The second thing I would like to touch on is the rural school innovation zones. That's where small schools can work together and with higher institutions of learning to cross-train their students in CTE programs that they're interested in. Maybe one school will do welding, another school will do medical for nursing, and they can cross-train their students. But that's a big win, and for Texas to incentivize that is great. We have 2 rural school districts in House District 34. And the last thing is Greg Abbott signing 4 different parent empowerment bills. These are not adding any additional dollars to public education, but it allows the transparency and the freedom to parents to have what they need for their students. One of them is supporting students with special needs. They removed that $30 million cap in order to fund special education, to adding allowing parents to determine if their child needs to repeat grade level between 4th and 8th grade. Third, requiring vendors to rate books, such as we rate our video games or our movies. And then last but not least, parent portals, so parents can access the curriculum and any educational materials as they so wish, and what's being featured on their students. Those are the things I like from this past session, but again, the public education funding was a big thumbs down. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Mr. Ortiz.
Yeah, well, I think the biggest accomplishment was the fact that vouchers were killed. To be quite honest with you, Abel and Edel have been authoring that bill for many, many sessions. And once again, Abel's amendment with bipartisan support, mind you, is what tanked vouchers, even though there was 4 special sessions that Governor Abbott tried to force vouchers down our throats, quite frankly. So I think that was the biggest accomplishment, Mike. But aside from that, there was a few other notable pieces of legislation. House Bill 567, which is known as the Crown Act, which basically says that you cannot disenfranchise or punish or a student that has hair that is basically part of their culture, part of their race, something that is traditional. We also have SB 68, which would allow students to take 1 excused day for career investigation day, basically, which would allow them to go and follow a professional or a job that they feel that they might be interested in, so they can see hands-on the experience to see if that's something that they would want to do. Also, one of the issues that actually Del Mar College worked on here with Dr. Marcus Camilla was House Bill 8, which was more money for community colleges and the dual credit program, and for basically the certificates of dual credit, which a lot of students take advantage of. So when you graduate high school, many of these students will graduate with an associate's degree or close to an associate's degree, which not only is great for them to get into the job force, but it's massive cost savings to their parents and to themselves as they start their college career. So that was House Bill 8. Actually, Dr. Marcus Gamayan and I believe Carol Scott were actually on the board that worked with the governor's office to craft that legislation. So, and one final thing is that we learned that education, what we've always known, is a bipartisan issue. There was bipartisan legislators from both sides of the aisle that worked together to make sure that vouchers did not pass. And as your next state representative, I'll be one of those votes to make sure that vouchers don't pass and steal vital funding from our public schools.
All right, thank you. Mr. Barrera.
Once again, fight off the school voucher schemes. Texas ranks at the bottom 10 of per pupil spending. And we don't need any more funding being siphoned off for private school vouchers. For these schemes, these votes show that the Texas House agrees we need better investment at the state level, an investment that shows a real commitment to 5.4 million Texas school children. I stand with our public schools 100% and believe that public money belongs in public schools. I'm proud to stand with the rest of the Texas House that took a stand against vouchers. And as state representative, I hope to pick up where Chairman Edel left off and the Texas House left off and fight to fully fund our neighborhood schools and oppose all voucher schemes.
Very good. Thank you, HB. Moving on to the next question. HB 1 by Chairman Buckley during the 4th called special session was one of the House's landmark votes on school issues. That bill contained $7.5 billion for school funding, including funds for a $2,000 to $4,000 teacher pay raise. The bill also contained a voucher provision. This voucher provision was stripped by a vote of 84 to 63, and the bill was ultimately withdrawn. Here's the question. What is the path forward for providing public schools and teachers with additional funding? We'll begin with Mr. Ortiz.
Great question. So this last legislative session, working on, speaking of vouchers, teachers from across the state went to testify in Austin against vouchers, against their own potential pay raise. They would rather not see vouchers, steal money from public schools instead of getting a pay raise. That says a lot. That says how dangerous vouchers are to the public school system here in Texas. And quite frankly, we need to pay teachers more. You know, it's a profession that is extremely demanding. One of my first jobs, actually out of college, I taught for about a year. I taught math. I tell people that was the hardest year of my life. You know, it was really an extremely demanding job. And so teachers need a pay raise, you know, and how do we move forward? Obviously, we have to find a compromise. We have to work with both sides of the aisle to make sure that we can fund schools properly, especially these unfunded mandates, which I know are some of the other questions that we'll get into. There's a lot of unfunded mandates that are forced on our public schools, which quite frankly don't have the resources to implement a lot of these programs. We see a lot of our public schools basically passing deficit budgets in order to accommodate some of these unfunded mandates. So, you know, we need to make sure that vouchers stay dead, because one of the options that we've seen is, since before special sessions, Governor Abbott has not been able to break the block of both Republicans and Democrats to make sure that vouchers don't pass. But what they may try to do in the future is bracket the bill, which basically means that it may only apply in larger cities, say Dallas, Fort Worth, Houston, San Antonio, Austin, and even here in South Texas. So that may be a workaround that Republican leadership may try to do. So we have to stay vigilant. We have to monitor this, and we've just got to make sure that we respect and pay our teachers what they deserve.
Thank you. Mr. Barrera.
You know, I think we all agree that we need better investment at the state level, and we need to show a real commitment to the 5.4 million Texas school children. All the educators, support staff, and local taxpayers. I support using the rainy day fund to help support short-term investments. Short-term needs like, obviously, school safety infrastructure, the unfunded mandates, fighting to prevent teacher layoffs, funding to help supplement pension shortfalls and prevent benefit cuts, and funding to provide one-time cost of living adjustments. But we all know that's not how you correct chronic underfunding. I also support increased per pupil spending with regular and automatic increases to the basic allotment to account for our public schools' challenging needs. Texas ranks in the bottom 10 of per pupil spending, and that's unacceptable. Let me say that again. Texas ranks in the bottom 10 of per pupil spending, and that's just unacceptable.
Thank you. Ms. Villalobos.
In my opinion, every single bill that passes through the floor should stand on its own merit. It's a shame that right now there's currently $7.5 million at the Capitol not going to our schools. When our schools desperately need it. There's there are 9 school districts in House District 34, over half of them passed a deficit budget this cycle, and that was not their first time. They are bleeding money, and we cannot continue down that road. The last time the basic allotment for students was raised was in 2019. 2019, that's pre-COVID. You've seen the inflation rates at the grocery store, at the gas pump, and in the mortgage crisis that's going on. And 2019 rates are not going to cut it. With that, I will say I think there does need to be a full overhaul of our educational finances. Right now, education is funded based off weighted attendance averages. So you have 100% of your expenses, but if only 94% of your students show up, that's how much income you get. We should switch to an enrollment-based funding for our public education system. I believe that will solve some of the problems in getting us up to par, and then from there, increasing the basic allotment to meet inflation needs. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Moving on to the next question. This is going to center on the teacher workforce. Prior to the last session, Governor Abbott asked the Texas Education Agency to establish a teacher vacancy task force. You likely recall that. Texas has almost 400,000 teachers in the state. And in the most recent Charles Budd Texas Teacher statewide poll, 75% of the teachers said that they were considering leaving the profession. That's a 20% increase from just 3 years ago. Now, one of the top priorities for the next legislative session should be how our schools attract, retain, and train our Texas teacher workforce. So given that, here is the question. What do you think is the largest obstacle for schools in attracting and retaining our teachers, and what can be done at the state level to fix some of these pressing issues? And we will begin with you, Mr. Barrera.
Paying benefits. It's essential to offer a competitive and fair compensation package and provide teachers with the support and freedom they need to do their jobs. That's why increased funding across the board is imperative. More funding for teachers and support staff pay raises, professional development, and continuing education opportunities, and enough money to support adequate staffing levels and funding to support our neighborhood schools. Texas can also do much better to provide an educational framework that empowers teachers to succeed, not teaching to a test and providing professional development opportunities. Providing adequate support, giving them a seat at the table and to be heard, ensuring teachers have the tools and resources to run their classrooms. No more buying supplies on their dime, and creating better working conditions, state-of-the-art facilities, and technology access to support staff to help in the classroom, counselors, administrative staff, etc. All these people are crucial to ensure our student success rate.
The question moves to you, Ms. Villalobos.
Within the state minimum for teachers right now, as a starting year, is $33,660. But let me tell you, your local school boards in House District 34 do not believe that's enough. They fund out of their own pocket an additional 54% at Bishop, and Ketty, Westcoast, Driscoll, Calhoun, Tolosa, CCISD, Robstown, and Rockville. 54% more in House District 34. We are paying our teachers than the state minimum. That's what we believe here. So I don't believe just increasing the salary scale is enough to implement the paychecks of our teachers here in the Coastal Region. We need to think of outside the box incentives to make sure that money is getting to our teachers' pockets. One of those things is the teacher incentive allotment that was passed in 2019. That made sure that 90% of those funds went into the teachers' pockets, trying to get them to 6 figures. We need to pass more incentives like that. Another thing is adding more tuition reimbursement or student loan forgiveness for our teachers. Not just pay raises, but those types of incentives will also help. Another thing is, like veterans have, more home buyer incentives, such as lower interest rates or down payments similar to them to help our teachers out in a crazy housing market. Two more things, sorry. Teaching is a female-dominant profession, yet not all school districts allow for fully paid maternity leave. That's insane. I cannot imagine giving birth and only having to spend 4 weeks with my child before having to go back to work to get my paycheck. And lastly, teachers deserve more than just TRS. They deserve their Social Security as well. We need to work with our U.S. congressmen to make sure that they get all of that money in their pocket. Thank you.
Mr. Ortiz.
Teachers in Texas are paid $8,000 less than the national average. You want to retain and bring better teachers or more teachers to the classroom, we simply got to pay them more. High quality teachers are linked to higher student achievement. So that basically means we need to make sure people are excited to be a teacher, that they want to be a teacher. And quite frankly, a lot of that has to do with pay. And right now, it's expensive to become a teacher. Right now, at Texas A&M Corpus, to do the teaching certificate program, it costs $5,000 a clinical semester. And then you have to work as a teacher for 16 weeks for free. And now it's going to be expanded to 2 semesters, so it's going to cost $10,000. And then you have to work 32 weeks for free. How is that any kind of incentive to get people to go into the teaching field? It's expensive. And so what that's doing is keeping people away from joining the teaching profession. So we've got to do things to incentivize folks to want to be teachers. We've got to do scholarship programs that say, hey, we're going to help pay for your education as long as you agree to then teach at a public school for X amount of years. So we've got to be creative in what we do to recruit and keep teachers. You know, it's getting expensive. It is expensive, and quite frankly, to keep our students educated and to keep them progressing in the school system, we got to have teachers that are excited to teach, that love their job, and quite frankly, that don't have to work 2 jobs just to make ends meet teaching for the school district.
Thank you. I can see by just some of the reaction here that you're getting a lot of good information. Now, whether you like the information that you're hearing or not from each candidate, I guess depends. I can see the nods and the question marks on above your heads and those kinds of things. So we are very fortunate to have very well thought out answers from each of our candidates tonight who are laying out this plan. So thank you to each of you. I'll also say we're a little ahead of schedule. I have rarely seen the timekeeper up here have to go and tell him to stop, if at all. So thank you again. I was prophetic in saying politicians can be brief and concise. Let's move on now to question number 5 here. Continuing on to a topic of great importance here, talking about safety and security. School safety, one of the biggest priorities of our schools. During the 88th regular session, HB 2, which requires at least 1 armed security officer to be present during regular school hours at each district campus, provided a funding provision that increased the existing allotment from $9.72 per student to $10 per student, and provided an additional $15,000 per campus. Here's the question. Have you talked with your school districts or campus principals about how this new provision is being implemented? And along with that, what else needs to be done to help our schools be safe? And we're going to begin by giving this question to Ms. Villalobos.
Unfunded mandate, 28 cents per student and increase and $15,000 per campus is not enough for what the legislature is requiring us to do. At Tolosa Midway, we recently passed a bond package, and that included $22 million for safety and security. Me and my husband worked together to create a pact to try to get out in our neighborhoods and get the vote out so that bond can pass. $22 million to safety and security that our local taxpayers in Tolosa said yes to. We should not have to pass a bond to keep our students safe. The state government needs to fund things that they're requiring us to do in order to keep our students safe. We do not need another Uvalde incident. CCISD implemented clear backpacks, California implemented metal detectors. My district passed this bond. Carroll High School has this super high AI camera technology that can detect a gun as soon as it enters the parking lot. These are great things that are happening, but we need the money to do them. There are other things that can be done. I'll go back a little bit. I visited Aqua Jules at ISD. They're an extremely small campus. When I went there, perimeter fence around everything. I was like, man, how do I get in? There was a guard shack. There was a marshal. I talked to that superintendent about their security measures, and he said he is worried that it takes 15 minutes for a first responder to get all the way out to office. He's forced to have to implement things such as the targeting program to get his teachers aware of what's going on and help with the incident, and that is not okay. And with my last 30 seconds here, we need to address the root of the problem as well. ESSER 3 funds did help supply a lot of our campuses with social workers to address mental health. That is one of the root causes of all of this. And we need to make sure we continue to fund mental health in our students and talk to them on what's happening that hope and all of those things to help resolve those problems. Thank you.
All right, let's bring the question of safety and security here to Mr. Barrera.
Yes, I mean, I've got many friends and all that, obviously, Corpus Christi Independent School District, Bishop, Charlestown, and, all I keep hearing is no more unfunded mandates. They need more funding and the flexibility to manage the funding that addresses the specific needs of their community. If we give our neighborhood schools the money to implement new state mandates, like the new school safety provisions, they'll happily do so. But as it is, many schools have to use their reserve funds to provide teachers with pay raises, and in many cases, keep the minimum staff necessary to keep their doors open. While many of our ISDs would like law enforcement officers on their campuses, each school district should be able to choose what is best for their community. Still, we have not done enough to address some of the underlying issues, such as mental health and easy access to guns. I mean, we haven't provided enough financial support to implement these new school safety mandates. We need to provide a template with direction and funding.
Mr. Ortiz.
This is a great question, and I recently met with the West Oso superintendent. Same thing, unfunded mandates. Excuse me. CCISD had to create 33 additional new jobs for security on their elementary campuses. Guess how much money the state gave per campus? $15,000 for security. How much do you think it will cost to have a actually well-trained, someone who knows how to use a gun, somebody who knows how to provide protection, not just some Barney Fife type, officer, or somebody that actually knows what they're doing should there be an emergency situation? Do you really think that you can pay or find somebody for $15,000? It's insulting. The state keeps forcing these unfunded mandates down. It's so concerning to all our educators, all our administrators. The fact is, we have to do better as a state. There was a lot of great points touched on. Mental health is a huge issue. We need to make sure that we have the counselors available to address those needs and to talk to students. And quite frankly, I will be a vote to make sure that we have funding for these unfunded mandates, because quite frankly, it's punishing the schools, it's punishing the students, and robbing resources for other programs that they vastly need and should be doing.
Thank you. Move on to the next question now. This one, a question on assessment and accountability. There's been a lot of discussion about the overemphasis on tests in recent years. Our current A through F accountability system is entirely based on STAR tests to rate our schools at the elementary and middle school levels. I believe it is this month that the Travis County District Court will be looking at whether or not to allow TEA to move forward on new college, career, military readiness rules that will drastically impact the overall ratings of campuses and school districts. So here is the question. Should our accountability system be so dependent on the STAR or any standardized test? And along with that, what factors of school quality would you like to see included when rating our public schools? And we're going to begin with Mr. Ortiz.
That's a great question, and no, we shouldn't be basing everything on just the STAR test. Right now, our elementary and middle schools, that's exactly what they're scored on, 100% the STAR test. That doesn't include any other factors such as dual language programs, health and safety, job training programs they may have, or parental engagement, or fine arts. That is not a way to rank a school just based on one test. As a matter of fact, Kingsville ISD has a lawsuit that 100 other school districts have joined. I believe CCISD has joined that lawsuit as well. We need to make sure that we expand how we rank our schools. A recent poll of the Charles Education Foundation said that 83% of Texans believe that TEA should not have an A through F school scoring system. Texans and students deserve an accountability program that's transparent and that takes in all the factors as to how a school is performing. So, high school, 40% of it is of it is college, career, and military readiness, and 20% is the graduation rate. So there's two systems, one for high school and one for elementary and middle schools. We can do better, and we must do better.
Ms. Villalobos.
I don't believe in teaching to the test. When I was in third grade, I was a slow reader. I think I said that before, but I guessed on the last two stories just because I was afraid to miss the bus. And what happened recently in Travis County, let me explain it to you in some very simple terms. You're part of a class, you're given the syllabus, this is what you're going to be graded on. This is how everything's going to be graded. You work really hard during class on all those things that are going to be ranked very heavily. And then towards the end of the semester, you're like, man, I'm going to get an A, like I did so well. And then the teacher says, actually, I'm changing the syllabus. I'm rearranging all those weights. It's not what it was at the beginning of class. And that's why schools are upset. And they have the right to be. You cannot change the goalposts for something at the very end, and something that affects your grade level online, something that affects your funding. That's not okay. I do strongly support having more CCMR weighted stuff, but it should not have been implemented the way it was. Right now in House District 34, we're blessed to have tons of industries around us where CTE with technical certificates, that if we partner with them, we can get our kids six-figure salaries almost straight out of high school if they get that level 4 certificate. Within our 9 school districts, we have A and B accountability ratings right now. And with what was implemented with the STAR test changes, almost all of those were dropped by a full letter grade. And that's not okay. That's not representative of what we're doing here in House District 34. Lastly, I think I have more time, so I'm going to skip back to another question I want to talk about. Within our House District 34 has 9 different districts. It serves over 50,000 students across 90 campuses. Around that, we have 73% of economically disadvantaged students right here in House District 34. That's 73% of students for a family of 4. They're making less than $55,000 per year. They're pitching pennies at home, and then they go to school and the district's pitching pennies as well. That's not okay. It's not right.
Thank you. And more on assessment and accountability, Mr. Barrera.
Well, raise your hand, Texas says it's best. Let's measure what matters in Texas public schools. There does need to be some form of accountability and assessment measures, but it shouldn't be so high stakes. These assessments and accountability measures often don't account for the diverse student population of the student body's varied and complex needs. Public schools are required to provide services to every kind of student, and these assessments do nothing to track the significant progress those students and educators made by making and educating and preparing them for success in the future. It's too black and white.
All right. Let's move on to, actually there's a couple of questions here, so let's talk about this. The issue of school funding and the state budget. The legislature has held state funding levels for schools without any increase to the basic allotment since 2019. Double-digit inflation over the past 4 years has placed pressure on our schools. This school year, federal stimulus funding runs out and must be obligated if there is any remaining in a school's account. So here are the questions that we put together. Have you talked to your school districts about what they are doing with their federal stimulus funds? And if so, what have you found out about how they're addressing learning loss? What are your schools going to do once the stimulus funds run out? A lot to think through there. We're going to begin with Mr. Barrera.
Well, addressing the learning loss and things that have happened are tutoring and academic support, hiring additional staff or utilizing existing personnel to provide one-on-one or small group tutoring to students who need extra support in specific subjects, extended learning programs, offering extended school days, weeks, or summer programs to provide additional instructional time for students to catch up on this learning. Professional development for educators, providing training and professional development opportunities for teachers to enhance their skills in addressing learning gaps and adapting to new instructional methods. A lot of the funds that were before were basically for, that addressed COVID. It basically for keeping a sanitary and safe place for the schools. A lot of them just didn't close. And so the situation now is that we've recognized is that we're going to have to provide them the resources to address that learning loss, because it still hasn't been enough. And we still haven't done it.
Denise Villalobos.
American Rescue Plan Act of 2021, ESSER 3, I'm sure I'm going to refer to it as, it provided $127 million to House District 34 school districts. And with that, there was some provisions. It said you can use it on any of these things, but make sure a certain percentage goes towards one of those. This is the greatest survey that I think has ever happened. They gave a big bucket of money to the school districts and said, help fix your schools. And every single one of our school districts went about it a little bit of a different way. But all of our school districts average about a third putting it straight back into their teachers' pockets with stipends, and that speaks volumes. That's what HB 34 wants. With different things the school districts did, they added a lot of them added interventionists, liaisons, additional tutorials. Some of them are able to fix HVAC systems. Betty did math testing on their elementary schools that they couldn't afford before. And most of them hired social workers. Again, like I said before, with the safety and security questions, making sure we have the funding to secure those social workers past just the ESSER 3 funding is extremely important. And the interventionists to catch up those early grades, kinder, first and second grade, that were there during COVID, to make sure they close the gap is also extremely important. A lot of the school districts are trying to reorganize and try to maintain those crucial positions at their campuses, but they need the state's help. Thank you.
Mr. Ortiz.
Yeah, there was a huge learning loss during COVID, and thankfully there was federal stimulus money to help bridge that gap, to pay teachers more, work on some of these unfunded mandates, make repairs and other issues that need to be addressed in the school system. But that was federal money, the same federal money that Governor Abbott and others bash Biden on, but yet happy to take it. And the reality is that money is running out. And so what's going to happen? Schools are now running deficits, budget deficits, because the money's simply not there. We talked earlier about how there's all this, $500 million, $700 million set aside for vouchers. That's just more money, folks, that is leaving the public school systems that are already hurting. That's just more money that is, if vouchers pass, it's going to put them in an even worse situation. So when you ask the question, like, what are they going to do? Well, they better hope and pray that we get new leadership in the state of Texas, because the way the situation is now, it's not going to work, quite frankly. The money is just running out, and at the end of the day, schools need those resources to make the wheels turn on the bus and to make sure that they have the resources that they need. It was just a Band-Aid. Now the Band-Aid has been ripped off, and we have to get realistic about funding our public schools to make sure that the resources are there. And it's time to stop the excuses, and it's time to stop trying to force this whole voucher scam, which is only going to hurt our public schools even more.
All right, thank you, candidates. I'm going to stay here, if I may, on the funding and state budget topic. The state, as we've talked about here, currently has a budget surplus of at least $18 billion, with an additional $23.7 billion, I believe it is, in the rainy day fund. So here's the question. What are your funding priorities for public education for this next session or during any called special sessions? So we'll begin with you, Ms. Villalobos.
Like I said before, half of the school districts within House District 34 pass deficit budgets. CCISD went over $25 million. Calallen, Tolosa Midway, over $2 million. Driscoll, $500,000. West Oso, $40,000. This is not okay. They're taking out their general fund savings account in order to pay and do daily operations. And this is not the first year this has happened. Some school districts have done it for 2 years, for 3 years. We cannot keep draining our districts dry. Like I said before, I would like to move to an enrollment-based funding system for public education, not attendance-based. Also, I think a lot of it needs to be overhauled, where it's not just a single source from, or a large portion that's sourced from the local taxpayer. That just causes burden, or more and more stress is put onto them. And lastly, increasing the basic allotment hasn't been touched since 2019. Inflation keeps on rising. The school districts stay steady. The districts, the school boards, the taxpayer, they're left hold for that, and the state government is to come in and help us out. Thank you.
All right, we'll move on to Mr. Ortiz.
You know, with all that money sitting there, I would raise teachers' pay, raise teacher pay, more resources for classrooms, increase the basic allotment, fund the unfunded mandates, expand pre-K, but it has to be funded. Now, many of y'all may have read that in Arizona, they passed a voucher program similar as to what the state here in Texas wants to do. The estimates that they had were completely wrong. It cost them billions of dollars to fund the voucher program, which, mind you, goes to private schools. Private schools, folks. The state of Texas wants to give you something like $10,000 to follow the student to those private schools. How much do you think it costs to go to private school? Do you think it costs $10,000? No, $20,000, $30,000. So who do you think that benefits? The individuals who can already afford to send their kids to these private schools. It doesn't help your average, student who's trying to get by at the local school district. So we have to be realistic. And I know I sound like a broken record going back to vouchers, but the reality is that's going to cripple our public school system. We saw what happened in Arizona. If you're not familiar with it, Google it, read it. It's there in black and white. It's a ton of money that is no longer going to the public school system, that's going into the pocket of private schools, these various religious organizations that run these. What's going to happen when some entity creates some religious school of a religion that maybe some people don't like, and then they get all that voucher money? We have to be realistic of these consequences or unintended consequences that are going to happen. And so we have to stay focused and keep an eye on the ball to make sure that our public schools have what they need. Thank you, Mr. Barrera.
Well, as I indicated before, we need to provide funding. We need to increase funding so that way we can increase our per pupil spending. Once again, we're in the bottom 10. We're in the bottom 10. And we need to look at this from perspective that we need to find this money. We need to provide a COLA for teachers. We need to provide a COLA for retired teachers so that way they can have peace of mind. We need to fund these safety measures of these unfunded mandates. And we need to look at a different perspective so how we fund teachers. Typically in any other business or sector or what have you, an individual gets a raise by accepting more responsibility, taking a promotion, working from some other program in which they can continue to get raises. A lot of young people these days change jobs so that way they can get higher pay. And so if somebody wants to teach and be a teacher for the next 20, 30, 40 years to be able to retire, we've got to figure out a way to compensate them adequately. Because right now what happens to young teachers, typically they go work for vendors. They go work for vendors and they go work in the private sector because they have their ability to move from that standpoint of that beginning salary of $40,000 to $50,000 a year to be able to jump to another 60. And then we're not replenishing that supply. So we need to really take a good hard look at that. We're funding teachers and we're rewarding them for being able to provide good student outcomes. Thank you.
All right. I want to just let the candidates know this will be the final question before we will then move to closing statements in just a moment. And this final question in this round is one I know that will interest a lot of folks in this room and certainly some folks who are watching online. This has to do with pre-K education. During the 85th legislative session in 2019, Texas made great strides to increase funding for pre-kindergarten instruction, expanding the amount of money and qualifying enrolled for a full-day pre-kindergarten. Yet, Texas still does not have a universal pre-K system in place to provide free pre-kindergarten for all students who apply for public school education. That being a given, here is the question. Would you support increasing funding and opening up admittance for all students to participate in full-day pre-kindergarten? And tell us why you answer the way that you do. We'll begin with Mr. Ortiz.
Great question. You know, studies show that kids that are in pre-K achieve higher academic gains. So I support it, but it has to be funded. Here at CCISD, and we have some of our great union leadership here in the audience, there's teachers that have to, in the pre-K, that have to change the diapers of these students. What happens if their parent is not there in the classroom? You have 16, 18 kids, 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds, and the teacher has to change the diapers. The school district doesn't even have changing tables. The school district doesn't have any of these resources. And it goes back to the other question is how can we get people involved to be teachers? Why would you want to be a preschool teacher if you don't have the resources and then you end up having to change diapers? This is not a glorified, daycare. You know, that's not what educators signed up to do. And so, yes, I support funding pre-K because the studies show that it helps the students in the long run. But we've got to make sure that the resources are there. We've got to make sure that the money's there and that the teachers are treated with the respect that they deserve for the profession that they love. Mr. Barrera.
Yes, most definitely yes. I support increased funding. Every study shows that access to high-quality pre-K programs help establish the framework necessary to succeed. It assists with early literary and academic achievement and improves long-term educational outcomes. This is one of the best investments we can make in our public schools and the future of our state.
Thank you. And Ms. Villalobos.
Like I said before, the students in House District 34, over 73% of them are economically disadvantaged. When there's a study done that people who come from an economically disadvantaged home from a wealthy home, there's about a 30 million word gap between those kids by the age of 2. It does decrease by the time they get to 4 years old to about 3 million, but it's still largely there. I 100% support universal pre-K. I went to pre-K myself, and look at me now. I have some nieces and nephews that have children, and they have to pay because they have to pay to go to a Christian school for pre-K4, pre-K3, because the state doesn't take their property taxes to allow them to do their own children. But I agree that it does need to be funded. I am not going to pass universal pre-K and then leave the districts once again holding the bag, asking their local taxpayers for money to burden them again to build the necessary infrastructure for more classrooms to have pre-K. There does need to be more done with public education funding in general before we get to this pre-K discussion, but I would 100% support it. Thank you.
Without pre-K, I went to kindergarten twice. All right. We're going to get to our closing statements here, and because our candidates have so generously left us a little bit of time here, I had mentioned earlier that you would have 2 minutes. We're going to increase that to 3 minutes because I do think you have a lot to say and we don't want to shortchange anyone. So we're going to give you up to 3 minutes in time for your closing remarks. And again, we're going to do this in alphabetical order, which means that Mr. Barrera, you are on the clock.
Thank you. And thank you again for the forum, and thank you for everyone for attending. Thank you for the audience at home that's watched online. Well, you know, many of you know about the work that I've done in our community. I think the first board I ever served on was in 1997. And you know, one thing that I've learned in that time is typically the federal government has the money, the state government makes the rules, and the locals have to deal with all the problems. We've got to solve them. And if anything I can tell you, I've got experience dealing with those problems, and I like to say that we've solved a lot of them. I served on the RTA board for 8 years. I spent 2 years as chairman. We dealt with a lot of issues with regard to public transit. We dealt with a lot of issues for serving the public that were transportation dependent. I served on the MPO, the Metropolitan Planning Organization, with regard to long-term planning. I'm proud to say that back in 2005 is when we were really looking towards the funding mechanism for the New Harbor Bridge. I served on the board for the Children's Advocacy Center at the Coastal Bend. And that basically that's a program that provides support to children that are victims of physical abuse, sexual abuse, and witnesses to violent crime. So I've been involved in the legislature with issues with regard to children's welfare. In fact, it was Chairman Neto that helped me, and back then Lieutenant Governor David Dewhurst, so we could expand the funding outside Nueces County, because we were also seeing children from Meade County, from Clayburgh County, from San Patricio County, from Aransas County. Access to care, with the business that I've been in, I say employee benefits, we've dealt with a lot of access to care issues. And, if you go to the western part of the county and you have basically individuals that are that of blue collar, then they're going to have to take time off, to go see a physician. If either here, then they're going to have to go to San Antonio. Now, I testified back in 2009, and I worked with a group. It was House Bill 2015, so that way we could reduce insurance premiums. What we did is we required insurance companies to become more transparent. I became chairman of the Texas Hispanic Chambers, working with Hispanic Chambers here. We worked on issues with fair procurement, access to capital, dealing with a lot of small business issues. Wow, it's been 3 minutes. And on the council, I've worked with items such as water, infrastructure, economic development, public safety, and quality of life. I want to help you solve those problems, and I ask you to vote. I ask for your vote for Roland Barrera for House District 34 State Representative. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ortiz.
Thank you, Mike, and thank you, Sophie, and Raising Hand Texas for organizing this forum. You heard a little bit about my positions on public education. As I mentioned, I did a short stint as a teacher, and I have extreme high regard and respect for the teaching profession because I saw it firsthand. And, we've had a great champion in Representative Abel Neto, who has been leading the charge to fight vouchers, leading the charge to support our public schools. And I pledge to you that I will be that same champion that Abel's been, to fight for you, to fight for our educators, to fight for our public schools, to make sure that they have the adequate resources to educate the future generations, the future Texans that are going through the school system. I'm proud of the support that I have. I'm proud of AFT, state and local, endorsing my campaign, because they know that I will stick to my word and support and listen to them. Listen to our local teachers, listen to our local educators, to see and learn firsthand the issues that they're facing. A lot of times, like we've heard up in Austin, the state, they don't know many of the issues that are happening here in South Texas or in other regions across the state. That's why our local school boards, we need to make sure that the control stays in the local school boards and that it's not just coming down from the state. It is not a one-size-fits-all. And I promise you that I will work hard for you. I will make sure I'm someone that you can call and that will have access to me to make sure that if you have any concerns, whether they're education or in this forum, and any other issue facing District 34, please get involved with the campaign. SolomonOrtizJr.com is the website so you can learn more about our campaign. Visit us. We have social media as well. Get involved, folks. Early voting starts on Tuesday. Every single vote counts, not just for District 34, but for all the races that we have here in the Coastal Bend. So make sure you get informed. Voting is your voice, and we got to make sure that we take our friends, our loved ones, our neighbors, our kids, our grandparents, make sure that everyone exercises their right to vote, because there is so much at stake, not just in education, but countless other issues that we're facing here in South Texas. Thank you. look forward to earning your vote and seeing you on the campaign trail. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Villalobos.
I'm not a politician. I'm an engineer. I'm a problem solver, and I'm a pretty big nerd. So when I was elected to the school board at Tolosa Midway back in 2022, the first thing I did after election night, I took 3 full days and I read the entire Texas Education Code dealing with public education. That's the type of person I am. I read through it, I drilled through it, and I brought notes to our superintendent saying, hey, we're not enacting this, or this policy. Like, there's money on the table that TM could be using. That's the type of person I am. Like I said in my opening remarks, I grew up extremely economically disadvantaged, just like many of the children in House District 34 right now, 73%. And look at me today. When I walked into that pre-K-4 classroom at 4 years old, I was not confident. But I'm here sitting before you today because of public education. Because of everything Tolosa Midway and my teachers instilled in me, I can be here talking to you. And that's amazing. I beat all the odds, all the statistics, and so can every single child in House District 34. Right now, I'm a project manager at Flint Hills Resources. I build pipelines and terminals all across the state of Texas. And I manage a project portfolio of $50 million. I never would have dreamed about doing that when I was a little girl, 4 years old, just struggling at home with poverty. And the education system in this state made me dream big and made me accomplish my goals. Now I'm running for House District 34. I am the Republican nominee. I don't have a contested primary in March, thank God. But I hope we heard today some of my platform dealing with public education. I hope you have warmness in your heart knowing that I will go to Austin and I will advocate for you. And I understand you do need more funding, and I will do my best to get it done. Thank you.
Thank you. As others will certainly do here in the next few moments, I want to thank each of the candidates for sharing themselves and for sharing their views and their beliefs with each of us. I appreciate the remarks that they brought tonight. I appreciate, again, the thoughtfulness that is behind those remarks. I want to say thank you to those who are here with us and certainly those who are joining us online as well. We all agree that the best vote is an informed vote, and I think we are all a little better informed tonight because of this forum. So thank you for that. Thank you for raising your hand, for organizing all of this. We appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone, for our audience in person and online. Raise Your Hand Texas believes every session is a public education session where we can use our voice. Please remember to vote. Early voting starts on Tuesday, runs through March 1st, Election Day being March 5th. We hope you enjoyed the forum. We hope you learned something today. Thank you so much and have a great evening.